Hi and welcome. My name is Jan van der Velde for C Consulting, and this is another accompanying video uh, of my session I gave at French Touch Dreamin in Paris. And in this video, we will explain how the flow works to add scoping questions when creating a new opportunity. So what do we mean with the scoping questions? For example, you create a custom object like a project, or in this case, you create an opportunity. You want a bunch of questions that the sales rep has to ask the customer. So in this case, we will call it scoping questions. Just to give you an example of scoping questions, so we created a custom object scoping question, and in this object we create some records, and you can see here that okay, we give it just an auto number name, but this is the question. And you can also add categories to questions that you can then use in the flow. For example, when you create an opportunity with a specific record type, you could only select to add those questions with a specific category. We will not do that in this flow. It's just an introduction on how you could create something like this. Um, of course, you can make it as big as you want or as complex as you would like. But just to give an example, so those are three scoping questions in this object I created. So for example, when creating a new opportunity, we want the sales reps to ask, for example, how many users will need to be able to create quotes to the question to the customer. How many commercial products are we talking about? Is it a complex price list, or do they only sell 20 specific products? Are there any users that may not see records owned by other users? Those are simple questions, and the list can be as long as you would like. But we want, and we will do it right now, just to demonstrate what we would like to achieve. So when we create a new opportunity for somebody, I'm gonna take an account and then new opportunity and give it a name, testing 123 opportunity, and give it a close date and the stage of prospecting. Now, when we hit save, a flow will be kicked off and will look in our custom object scoping questions, and it will take all those records, loop through each record, and will create a custom record on the opportunity called opportunity scoping question. It will create copies of the records in scoping questions. So they're not related to each other. We didn't create a lookup on it, so it's not a junction object on the opportunity. It's really a copy of the existing scoping questions at the time of creation of the opportunity that will be copied into an opportunity scoping questions related list. So we hit save, and here we go. And we can see now that there is a related list opportunity scoping question, and it contains those three questions that are at this time in the scoping question object. So how do we go about creating this kind of flow? So there is not a screen element where a user has to put something in or fill in some fields. It's just an auto-launched flow. And we kick it off with Process Builder. Maybe, as you know, Process Builder can launch flows. So we will have a look at that, how that works. So when we go to Process Builder and we have a look at our process launch scoping questions flow, we will look at that one. Okay, so here we are in our Process Builder. So we can see that the process builder starts from the opportunity object, and only when a record is created, um, And we will do that for all opportunities. We didn't differentiate between record types or something. So all those scoping questions have to be related to all new opportunities that are created. So there are not really criteria, just execute the actions. And as an immediate action, we will create an action calling a flow. So launch a flow is the action that we chose. And what do? We have in our flow, we created a temporary variable called process builder opportunity ID, so PB opti ID. Um, and that is just a text variable. And we will, when we call the autolaunch flow from process builder, we will fill that field passing the opportunity ID from the record that kicked the process builder off. So we will just pass the opportunity ID to our auto-launched flow. That's all what that we do in the process builder here. So it's not so complex. It's really straightforward. So let's have a look at the flow itself. When we go to flows, we have a flow called demo scoping question. It's here, and when I open it, you will see how the flow works. So here we are. So let's start by exploring our variables and stuff. Here you can see variables, PB opti ID. So I created that one in here. So it's just a text data type. It will receive the ID of the opportunity, and its input output, because it comes from process builder, it has to be an input, and we will use it in the next elements. So that's why we chose input output. But baby optID is just a temporary empty variable that will receive the opportunity ID, and with that ID we will be able to link the opportunity scoping questions to the correct opportunity. So let's start with the start element. You can see that fast look up the scoping questions is the start element in the flow. So when we look at that, what does it do? This element will do a lookup in the object scoping questions. So that's the object where our questions reside. And we will query that, and we will say select all the records in that object and assign it to an subject variable list, and call that scoping questions list, because it can contain 0 records, but it could also contain 10, 20, 30 records, questions. So it's a list. So we just say query all records in scoping questions and assign it to a variable scoping questions list, which is an S-object collection. And from those records, save the fields, the fields in that list for each record. Save the ID, the question, the category, and the name. Those are the only fields we need. We don't need created by or created date or something like that. Those system fields, we don't need them. We just want to copy the question, the category, and the name. So now we have a list containing all the records with those fields at this time. So what do we do with that list? So for we will loop through that list because it's a dynamic number. It can be 1, it can be 20, it can be 10 records. So we will loop through all those records. So that you can see here, loop through the scoping questions list in ascending order. It doesn't really matter in this case, but there could be times that it does matter if you want to do it in a specific order. And for each record that you find in that list, we will assign it to a temporary record variable. So in this case, we will call it temp scoping record. Um, because when you loop through a list, even if there are 3 records, at each loop time, so we go fetch the first record, we have those 4 fields of that record. We will put that in a temporary uh, as object record variable called temp scoping record, and we will work with that record at that time. And when we did our work with it, we go back to the list, loop through it, we fetch the next item in the list, assign it also to the temporary scoping record with 4 new value fields, and do our stuff again, loop through it again, fetch the next record, assign it to the temporary record, and do something with it. And that for all the records in the list, that's looping. So when we are looping and we fetch one record, we assign it to the temporary variable. What do we do? What do we do next with that? We will do an assignment to a temporary new record, and we call that as object variable temporary opportunity scoping question. So that's that other custom object that resides on the opportunity, that is linked to the opportunity. And such a new record has to receive the values of the name, the category, and the question from the temporary scoping question that we are working with at that time from within the loop. So that's what we are going to do here. So we create a shadow opportunity scoping question record, and we assign it the temp scoping record name. Then the next one is the temp scoping record category. We also give it the question itself. So those three fields are the fields from our scoping question. And an extra field, a lookup to the opportunity. And that lookup, we will fill it with the PB Opti ID that we received from Process Builder, because that is the opportunity to which those new records have to be related. So here we created a shadow record of the type opportunity scoping question. And when we did that, we will assign that temporary record to a list of opportunity scoping questions to create. So we loop through our scoping questions for each record in that list, create a temporary scoping question record, then create a temporary opportunity scoping question record and give it the fields of our temporary scoping question. And when you created that record in memory, assign it to an empty list as the first record, and that empty list is called assign to list. That empty list is called opportunity scoping questions to create, and we add that shadow record to that list. So in our example, we have 3 scoping questions. So we will have a look just to explain it right, because it's looping. It's not so obvious. So we have a list of 3 scoping question records. When we loop, we take the first scoping question and we assign it to a temporary variable temp scoping question with his 4 fields. We then copy that into a new record called temp opportunity scoping question. We give it those 3 fields and also the opportunity ID from Process Builder. We created a new record in memory. It doesn't exist in a database yet, just in memory. And we assign that record into a list, a new list called opportunity scoping questions to create. And we go back to our loop. We fetch the second record. We create a temporary scoping question record with its 4 fields. We assign it to a new temporary opportunity scoping question record, assign those 3 fields and also the opportunity ID, and we put it in the list to create. We go back to our scoping questions list, we fetch the third and last record, we create a shadow temp scoping question, we assign it to a shadow temp opportunity scoping question, and we put it in the list. We have 3 records now to create of the object opportunity scoping questions, linked to our opportunity in this list. We go back to the loop and we see, oh, there are no more questions. We have processed all three of those records. So we go to the end of the loop. And what does the end of the loop say? It's a fast create opportunity scoping questions, and it just says create all records that are in our list opportunity scoping questions to create. So those records that reside here with their new values. Three of those values are copies of the scoping question and then also the lookup to the opportunity ID. So this contains three records and there are no more other records to add to that list. We processed all three, so we go at the end of the loop, we do a fast create of that list of records onto our opportunity. This is what this flow does and how that works. I hope it's all a bit clear. Um, you can learn much about flow. It can do powerful stuff, and this is just for demonstration purposes. So it's a rather basic auto-launched flow, not too complex, but the loop part gives it a bit of complexity that you have to grasp and understand before working with it. But you can find a lot of resources to learn more about flow and in-depth knowledge on looping through records and using a fast create or a record create or those things on the help and training portal. But also on Trailhead, there are amazing exercises in the automation track. So definitely do that. Thank you, and I see you in the next video.